So, have you ever walked into a room and just sensed that something felt different, even though nothing physically appeared to be unusual? I mean, it's a completely universally relatable experience, right? You look around, everything seems perfectly normal, but there's this undeniable shift in the atmosphere that you just can't quite put your finger on.
Or hey, how about this? Have you ever experienced a moment where you felt incredibly strongly led to do something, and you just followed that sudden gut instinct, only to discover later that that single decision changed literally everything in your life? We all encounter these sudden, inexplicable leadings, but they leave us with a massive question mark about where they actually come from.
And honestly, that brings us to the absolute core problem we're solving today. How do you distinguish genuine spiritual discernment from your own imagination, your fluctuating emotions, your assumptions, or even just plain old fear? Because as the source text points out, not everything that feels spiritual is actually spiritual, and not everything spiritual is super dramatic. So how do we separate truly spiritual guidance from our own human reactions?
Well, let's dive right into it. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are enthusiastically unpacking a really fascinating biblical and practical guide based on the source text, How to Discern Spiritual Activity Around You. We're going to map out exactly how to recognize real spiritual activity and avoid those common traps of deception and emotionalism. It's a pretty comprehensive framework, so let's just get right to it.
Section 1. Defining true spiritual discernment.
The source actually completely reframes our typical understanding here. Discernment is defined as the ability to distinguish between truth and error, wisdom and foolishness, God's leading and human impulses. You know, a lot of people mistakenly think discernment means seeing spooky, hidden things or having these wild, sensational experiences. But biblically, discernment is much more grounded. It's really about perceiving reality accurately through truth. Basically, spiritual maturity and discernment grow together. The more grounded you are in truth, the more capable you are of recognizing what's actually genuine.
Section 2. 5 signs of spiritual activity. Okay, so these 5 signs give us a really clear picture of what internal spiritual growth actually looks like in practice. Number 1, increased awareness of God's presence. 2, conviction rather than condemnation. 3, a stronger desire for truth. 4, increased discernment about influences. And 5, greater compassion for others. It's this beautiful progression from internal awareness straight out to outward compassion. Let's break these down to really understand the mechanics, starting with the very first sign. Sign 1. Presence produces stability, not chaos. The text clarifies that an increased awareness of God's presence doesn't require wild visions or dramatic, chaotic emotions at all. Instead, it usually manifests as a profound peace during uncertainty, or maybe confidence during a really difficult time, or clarity during confusion. God's work isn't dependent on volatile emotions. His presence becomes evident through the solid, stable fruit it produces in your life.
And that actually perfectly illustrates the second sign, presenting a crucial contrast you absolutely must understand: conviction versus condemnation. Genuine spiritual correction, which is conviction, is always designed for healing. It simply identifies areas for growth, points you towards transformation, and carries the ultimate purpose of restoration. On the flip side, condemnation aims to completely destroy. It pushes people toward hopelessness, traps them in shame, and basically tells them they can't change. Understanding this difference is absolutely essential for recognizing true spiritual activity versus just carrying around negative emotional weight.
Moving right along to signs 3 and 4, we see a sort of dual action taking place: hunger for truth and sensitivity to influences. Genuine spiritual activity creates an increasing hunger for foundational truth, meaning you seek wisdom and scripture over sensational speculation. But at the exact same time, you develop a heightened sensitivity to the influences around you. You start wisely evaluating what external factors strengthen your focus and what just creates distraction. It's definitely not about being fearful of everything. It's just about recognizing what actually helps you move closer to growth.
Now this brings us to the 5th and perhaps most surprising sign: compassion. A lot of people associate advanced spiritual awareness simply with acquiring some sort of deep, mystical knowledge. But the source explicitly connects maturity with love, stating, the closer people grow to God, the more they begin seeing others differently. Love is often one of the strongest evidences of God's activity. True spiritual discernment actually makes you slower to judge, quicker to understand, and far more willing to forgive.
Section 3. Testing your spiritual experiences. So, what happens when you do have a highly unusual experience, like a super vivid dream or a uniquely strong feeling? Because those things can easily stem from everyday stress, expectations, or just high emotion, we have to pivot to a practical toolkit for evaluation. The source emphasizes that truth never fears examination. If you have a profound spiritual impression, run it through these 5 test questions. Does it align with God's character? That evaluates consistency. Does it agree with biblical truth? That's your foundation. Does it produce wisdom rather than confusion? That checks for clarity. Does it encourage love, humility, and faithfulness? That looks at the fruit. And does it draw attention toward God? That evaluates your focus. Asking these specific questions is exactly what protects believers from falling into deception.
Section 4. Fear versus genuine discernment.
This directly leads us to a major pitfall identified in the text. It is a frequent and honestly really dangerous mistake to confuse genuine spiritual discernment with fear. Fear completely distorts your perception. It exaggerates threats, imagines dangers that might not even exist, and forces you to react in a total panic. Discernment, on the other hand, operates completely differently. Discernment remains calm, it evaluates carefully, seeks truth, trusts wisdom, and then thoughtfully responds. As the source notes, one produces confusion while the other produces absolute clarity. Knowing which one is driving your decisions is a total game changer.
Section 5. The ultimate spiritual goal. We've talked a whole lot about things happening around you, but where does the most important spiritual activity actually take place? Well, the greatest spiritual activity happens literally within you, not around you. It is so easy to become fascinated with external, extraordinary phenomena and completely overlook what's happening internally. The text makes a really powerful case that changing your attitudes, developing your character, and growing in love are vastly more significant miracles than any external, dramatic event out there. I absolutely love this final quote from the text. The safest path to spiritual discernment is staying close to God. The greatest miracle is often a transformed life. True discernment isn't about becoming obsessed with uncovering hidden things. It comes simply from walking closely with God, practicing humility, and being obedient to the truth. When you know the truth deeply, everything else becomes incredibly easy to recognize. So I want to leave you with this really provocative question to chew on after today's explainer. Are you chasing external mysteries, or are you pursuing internal transformation? Are you just looking for the spectacular around you, or are you actually doing the quiet, vital work of growing your character and grounding yourself in truth? It's a profound shift in perspective that kind of changes how we view everything. Keep asking those big questions, keep examining your influences, and I will see you in the next explainer.